Guys, in this video we'll talk about the character that will probably get the most improvements in 5.1, Mualani. In fact, she's receiving a brand new Best in Slot support in Xilonen, and some of her kit issues are allegedly getting fixed. So let's look into these things. First of all, I want to say that even now, Mualani isn't really a bad character. Quite to the contrary, she's one of the characters with the highest damage potential in the game, and I truly believe that with the improvements she'll be receiving next patch, she'll potentially be comparable with the best DPS we have in the meta. What sets her apart is basically her capability to throw multiple nuke-type attacks throughout the 10 seconds window of her elemental skill, and quite easily as well. Her shark normal attacks are, all things considered, easy to stack to maximum once you get the hang of her movement patterns, and each one of them has the damage potential to either comfortably clear a mob wave or seriously put a dent into a boss HP. She is similar to Navia in a way, because just like Mualani, Navia can unleash a strong single hit attack multiple times a rotation through her elemental skill, but Mualani's normal attacks are generally much higher in damage, and they also have much better AoE properties thanks to Mualani's marking mechanics that allow her to deal damage to all of the opponents she's came in contact with before unleashing a normal attack. As a result, her AoE feels better than most characters in the game not named Novelette, assuming everything goes as intended. I'm saying this as a disclaimer because Mualani is quite the buggy character. Specifically, her targeting has some issues, in that her hits might miss if the opponent moves while she's loading her attacks. This goes both for her normal attacks side AoE damage and for the normal attacks themselves. The second thing in particular is a pretty severe issue, as missing a normal attack entirely almost cuts Mualani's rotation damage output by 1/3, and it's pretty much the difference between her being a very strong DPS and a mediocre one. In this sense, the developers have acknowledged these aspects of her gameplay as bugs, and they're specifically aiming at improving her targeting capabilities starting from next patch. By the looks of it, they're mostly focusing on the initial normal attack rather than the side AoE damage, but honestly, even if they manage to fix just that, Mualani will start to feel considerably more consistent for the casual player, I feel like. Still, Mualani's high reliance on her normal attacks isn't just a problem in the light of her current bugs, but it also has more permanent ramifications. Unlike Navia, that can follow up her strong elemental skill hits with pretty decent normal attacks, Mualani really just has 3 to 4 attacks in total that she can use during the rotation. This is a problem because while the sum of those attacks damage results in one of the highest damage outputs in the game, she might not need that much damage in some instances, like when she's facing a low HP mob and her full stack normal attack results in a way big overkill. As opposed to her, Navia can simply finish off low HP opponents with her normal attacks and save her next elemental skill for the next opponents. While Mualani can sort of do that too by just using a lower stack, faster normal attack, her normal attacks still have a minimum cooldown, so she probably won't be able to use an additional normal attack after that either way. This problem of hers could be solved if her teams had strong sub DPS that could share damage responsibilities with her, but she doesn't exactly have many options in that sense. Xilonen is the most common sub DPS that she'd have on her composition, since she also provides the best pyro application in the game. But in order to function on Mualani's teams, she has to be used with Famonius, and with 250 energy recharge or more, a type of build that won't allow her to deal any sort of significant damage, given also the absence of Bennett on these teams. A nice sub DPS for her is usually Emily, that only really needs burning applied on opponents to deal good damage. On Mualani teams, she's pretty nice, also because Zhongli is an option here for resistance reduction purposes, considering it's not easy to slot anemo characters into Mualani teams, and Emily benefits from that. Fiorina is also viable, and typically a good option in a team-wide sense thanks to the buffs she provides through her burst and the Hydro resonance she provides by being the second Hydro on the team. However, her continuous Hydro application forces you to have Xilonen on your team to even hope to have consistent vapes with Mualani, and even then it's not that consistent actually. As far as I'm aware, it's only realistic to achieve a full vape rotation if you're facing opponents with large hitboxes, as in that case Xilonen's Pyronado hits are pretty consistent and she'll be applying pyro without fail. Against small targets, especially if they move around, Xilonen will be missing some hits, and Fiorina's Hydro application will become intrusive enough that Mualani's vape hits will get halved in frequency at the very least. Any sort of application from an extra character that can reduce the pyro aura will also be a problem for Xilonen and hurt the consistency of the team even in the best case scenarios. Still, in the situations where this team composition works, it's arguably the damage ceiling for Mualani teams, and I will say that as a whole it's a nice archetype against bosses. But back to the point, while you can sort of bring some DPS to Mualani's teams to alleviate these issues of hers, she will never feel as flexible as characters like Arlecchino. It's however a necessary trade-off, as Mualani's damage profile is still unique in a very effective way, since she can hit for hundreds of thousands of damage with every hit on an AoE skill, and this allowed her to get very good results in speedruns. It's worth mentioning that the current Abyss Blessing buffs her damage by a massive, maybe unprecedented amount as far as blessings go, so expecting these levels of result to be the norm for Mualani might be reckless. On the flip side, she'll be getting very good additions to her teams in the following patches, and that will very likely make up for what she'll be losing by missing this blessing. Before I get to that, let me remind you that if you enjoy my channel but you haven't subbed yet, please consider doing so because it really makes me notice your support. Xilonen is the hot topic, as she's a support that can provide casual level buffs with an easier setup and a longer buff uptime, while keeping her buffs in multi-wave and also healing. All four of these things are very important for Mualani. For starters, anemo characters currently struggle to be particularly effective on their teams because the presence of pyro application makes it harder for them to consistently swirl Hydro. A viable way is just to use a normal attack with Mualani at the start of the rotation and swirl it right after, which technically works, but also brings up a second issue, namely the fact that since the Redis and Veneer effects only last for 10 seconds, the buff will end midway through Mualani's rotation. Also, since these effects will only last on the opponents that get swirled, if they die and Mualani has to switch to a new target, of course she won't get a damage amplification there. Since Mualani is the type of character that can absolutely demolish opponents with every attack, this is consistently an issue for her. Xilonen literally solves all of these issues for Mualani, all of them. Her resistance reduction effects last for 15 seconds and work like Zhongli's shield effects work, so they will basically follow Mualani wherever she goes and affect surrounding opponents for their entire duration. Secondarily, in order to activate the effects of the Nathan supportive set and buff Mualani by an additional 40% damage bonus, she has to trigger a Hydro reaction through Crystallite. The setup in this sense is very similar to what anemo characters have to do, so Mualani normal attack at the start of the rotation and then Xilonen. The difference, however, is that the Nathan set effects last for 20 seconds as opposed to the Verdis and Veneer's 10 seconds, so the first are much more reliable. On top of all of this, she also heals a ton, which is very useful here in particular. Unless Mualani has Zhongli in her teams, she mostly uses characters like Dei and Xinyan for defensive purposes, since other than keeping her alive, they also can contribute to the offensive side of things through their pyro application. However, while they're nice, they're not impeccable defensively, as Xinyan's shield isn't super sturdy, and Dei only absorbs 50% of the damage Mualani receives. Basically, Xilonen being a healer adds an extra safety net to the less durable Mualani teams. As a result, the addition of Xilonen increases the damage floor of pretty much all the Mualani teams, while also making them much more consistent. She also works pretty well on Furina teams, because other than being a healer, she's a character with very low application. She only applies Geo during her 4 seconds window with her skill, a normal attack and her elemental burst, and this window will happen before Xiaoling uses her pyro application abilities. This not only means that Xilonen won't interfere with vape consistency, but also that she'll only reduce the hydro gauge on opponents, since she will be using her abilities after Furina sets up her burst and skill. This will probably ensure higher first hit vape reliability with Mualani. Keep in mind that this is all coming for a character that, all things considered, even with all the issues that are currently present for her, still manages to be a very strong meta option. Like, it could be argued that Mualani had one of the lowest release points ever in terms of how many good teammates she has and how buggy her kit is, but still she's pretty nice. Even in the Hydro niche, while it's very easy to say that Nuvolette is the better option, better pull, the thing is, they're kind of different. Nuvolette comes with a more sustained damage profile and higher AoE consistency, but it kind of lacks Mualani's front load capabilities, as in my experience, assuming everything goes well, she can usually deal with things faster than he can. Of course, however, good investment is very important on her because she makes up for so much of the team damage that if all you have for her is a free-to-play build, she might not feel impressively strong. Her signature weapon in the early constellations will almost double her damage compared to a fully free-to-play archetype, and I'd argue that this is more important for her than it is for most other characters in the game because of how her damage profile is. She really is a dominant damage dealer that only really needs the right setup to be able to shoulder the entire team weight by herself. This is mostly about reaching the right energy requirements on your supports and make rotations consistent, like as I said 250 energy recharge plus on Xilonen or 220 energy recharge or more on Mona, Xinian and so on. Mona in particular has been a nice partner for Mualani in my experience, because while her burst buffs only have a short duration of around 6 seconds, if your Mualani deals enough damage to be able to clear the wave in 1 or 2 hits, that means that Mona will be buffing the entirety of that window, and that has proven to be very effective in my experience. So, Mualani has a lot of potential, and I fully believe it will be fulfilled in the next few patches. We'll see if time proves me right, I guess. And with this, I'm done for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, and also go check the 5.1 pulled guide video made a few days ago. Bye bye.